Have you ever tried to control a situation and only made it worse? That's because control usually comes at a cost. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We'll be talking about what control cost us and what the actual power is that God promises us. All right, so this is part 2 of this book called The Cost of Control. On the last episode, we talked about why we crave control and how we try to control. So today we'll be talking about what it costs us and the real power that God promises. And I'm here today with my amazing husband, Juanava. Hey, babe.
What's up?
So we actually just came back from church earlier, and we ran into, because in the last episode I talked about how this book was actually from a Bible study that I didn't go to, and we ran into the person who leads it, and I was telling her like how much we love the book and all that. So I just, in the last one, it kind of sounded like I didn't go just because I didn't want to. That's not the case. Just want to make sure that I make that clear. We went before I knew I was pregnant. I think I was already pregnant, but then after that week I found out we were pregnant, and then that's when the nausea started, and then I've been feeling better now, but it's one thing or another that I haven't been able to. All that to say, nothing really.
That you don't have control.
That I don't have control. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, so today we'll be talking about what it costs us. So the first thing that I'll go over the costs, and then we'll break it down. So some of the things it could cost us is broken relationships, burnout, body shame, anxiety, exhaustion, and then we'll talk about the real power that God does promise us. So let's start off with broken relationships. It says the toxic impact of controlling other people. So in the last episode we talked about how just because I know someone doesn't mean I can control them. And she used the example of a child having anxiety because they come from divorce and they don't actually have any control over it. So, they might blame themselves for whatever reason. They might blame this or that. But in reality, it was something that was completely out of their control. She also uses Sarah and Abraham as an example. So if you know the story, an angel came to Abraham when both him and his wife were old and told them that they were going to have a son. This whole time that they've been married, she's never been able to get pregnant. So she kind of like laughed at it, like she didn't really believe it. And then after a few years had passed, she was like, hey, God made that promise. Maybe you need to go sleep with my slave, her servant, and get her pregnant. So I don't know why Abraham listens to her.
Yeah.
And he goes and he sleeps with the servant, gets her pregnant, and then obviously the servant is now mad at Sarah because Abraham just went in there, took advantage of her, was probably against her will, got her pregnant. And so this strife, is that the right word? Like this animosity between them starts. And, if you know the story, Sarah ends up kicking out Hagar, who is a servant, and her son Ishmael. And then that's where the Arabs come from. And then the Jews come from Isaac. And as we all know, they've always been at war. And that's where it started. And it was because Sarah was trying to control something that God had already promised. Yeah, and then she also talks about how you end up victimizing other people, or creating victims will be created out of your mess, basically. So in this case, Hagar and Ishmael were the victims. Mm-hmm. There's also another story about them, Abraham and Sarah, where they're traveling, I believe, to Egypt, and Abraham gets scared because he thinks that Sarah's so beautiful, he thinks they might want to kill him so that they can keep her. So he tells everybody that that's his sister. So the Pharaoh doesn't know. So he's planning on sleeping with Sarah. And then I think God or an angel, I don't remember the story very well, but comes to him in a dream and tells him. And he's really mad. And he's like, you're about to make me sin against your God. And just because you're lying. And he ends up being mad and kicking them out. So sometimes whenever we try to control the situation by our own means, we end up creating messes, and then people are victims of those messes. And in this case, like the divorce, the child ends up being the victim.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think you see it in movies a lot. People like withhold truth to control how much somebody knows or something about them, and it ends up coming out. And it's like Hallmark movies, right? It ruins a relationship, then they come back and rekindle it, whatever. Once they've given up control of how the other person's going to perceive them, because it's like, oh no, they're going to judge me off of this, and you have no idea if the person's going to judge you or not, or it might even cause a connection because like, hey, like I understand so and so went through this, or I've gone through this. So I think you see that like in movies a lot.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that. If you know me, you know I love Hallmark movies.
Yeah, that's why it said Hallmark.
I actually haven't watched them in a while, but Christmas is coming
Yeah.
up, so I might start watching them again soon. And then it says, sometimes we struggle with wanting to control others, not because of arrogance or power, but because of love. So in like the Abraham and Sarah situation, it wasn't necessarily arrogance of their part. It was more in their head they were doing it out of love.
Yeah.
Another thing it will cost you, aside from broken relationships, or it could cost you, is burnout. The never-ending work of controlling our circumstances. And it says, when we are smack dab in the middle of an unpredictable, uncontrollable situation, we stop thinking clearly and our survival mechanism kicks in. Psychologists refer to this as the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is like a direct story, but when I was supervisor and I had multiple crews, I'd be trying to like run back and forth, which is part of the job, making sure everybody's doing it. But I'm like, no, you got to do it like this. Like, do it the way I'm telling you to do it. I'm telling you to do it for a reason. Versus if I would have just said, hey, this is this was when I first was a supervisor. I would try to control it all. And I would be like, hey, you need to do exactly like I say because I'm telling you for a reason. So I just being like, hey, this is exactly what they're going to do. I know you might want to do this, but this is what they're asking for. And they have their own reason why. So we're just going to build it the way or do it the way they wanted. And that's it. It's out of our control because they're the client. They want it. So let's just give it to them like that. Versus me, like, wearing myself out, trying to, like, basically fight with the crew or them fight with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good example
good.
or not.
Yeah,
but.
it is. That's good. Yeah, and it says, control, trust, and self above all, and tells us to rely on our own ability to get things done. It says we overestimate the value of good work ethic, when in reality, our human power is limited. And so we don't have the capacity that God has. So the mental, emotional, and spiritual capacity to try to be in control all the time, at every moment. And so obviously that will cause burnout.
Yeah.
It says only God has that infinite bandwidth. And that's why he even tells us to keep the Sabbath. Because he's like, you need at least one day off. Like, stop trying to do so much all day, every day. The third thing that it can cost you is body shame. The impossible idea of controlling our bodies. So in this one, she talks about how women will try to stop, or if not stop, at least slow aging. The thing that I learned with my body was a pregnancy. How and I've said this before, whenever I first found out that I was pregnant, I said I started cooking everything from scratch and
Chicken feet.
yeah. Started making collagen from scratch. And that was like the first maybe 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm going to keep working out and I'm going to eat so healthy and this is going to be the healthiest baby ever. And then out of nowhere, the nausea hits me. And I had no control over it. No control over how I felt with the smells. I felt like the first trimester, I couldn't even go anywhere or do anything. And it was just completely out of my control.
That's a good story for burnout and both. Because I felt like I was burning myself out trying to be like, oh, I'm going to cook everything. Like, I'm going to go cook outside. I'm going to go pick up the food. And then I just gave up control and I said, hey, we have Uber Eats and we have DoorDash. I just bought the subscriptions. I was like, order whatever you want. Because I can't control what we have in this house anymore for food-wise. Because I couldn't cook anything because it would cause nausea for you. Yeah, I even grilled outside and you're like, I could still smell it in the house. I'm like, it's outside. What do you... But yeah, so I just gave up all control. And it was way more peaceful than me trying to make sure that, like, oh, I planned all the meals. I was like, nope, you just do it.
Yeah, yeah, and even for me, it was out of my control too because you would ask me like, "Hey, what do you want?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Some days something I could eat some one thing, and then the next day I'll throw it up.
Mhm.
I was like, I feel, and it was so not frustrating, but I felt so like
Helpless.
helpless when you would ask me
Mhm.
like, "What do you want to eat?" And I'm like, I know as much as you do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we had no control over what we controlled what we ordered, but we didn't have a control of the way you responded to it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So there's been a lesson for me to let go of control. It has been this pregnancy,
Mhm.
and people will ask me like, "Oh, do you plan on doing this or that? You know, with the baby?" And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, we'll see. I
Yeah.
was like, I have no idea what kind of mom I'm gonna be. I don't know if I'm gonna be
A
like,
good one.
oh, thank you. That's the goal. But I mean, am I gonna be like more laid back, like, or am I gonna be like all over him, like, or am I gonna be in the middle? I have no idea.
I think I know.
What?
He's gonna fall and you're gonna run over there like, oh, baby.
Kiss his boobs.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe. This episode was sponsored by the Injury Paralegal with Adam and Garza Law Firm. If you guys are ever in an accident, they are the people to call. I personally used them whenever I was in an accident, and throughout the whole process, they always made me feel like family, like my health was their priority, and they were able to get me a settlement that I was happy with. So if you guys are ever in this situation, I recommend you save her phone number. I'll share it on the screen. Go follow her on Instagram, the Injury Paralegal, and just have this information on you because you just never know. Hopefully nothing ever happens, but at least that way, for example, when it happened to me, I had the adrenaline going. This had never happened to me. I wasn't sure what to do. I called Monse, and then she guided me throughout the whole process. They also speak Spanish, so if you or a family member doesn't speak English, you guys can also give them a call. All right, so for that, she used that example, and then she says, what makes the body good? So the body was made by God, and it reflects God's image, and is God's chosen temple to house his Holy Spirit. So our bodies are a temple for the Holy Spirit. We can't make it good. We can make it better, or we can make it worse. But our bodies are naturally, how do I explain this? So, like, if you read magazines or watch, you're on social media a lot, you're comparing yourself. You'll start believing that you have to look a certain way, that you have to be skinny, that you have to be attractive, that you have to have long hair, that you have to have a six pack, that you have whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, the only thing we can do is control. We can control what we eat, and we can control how much we exercise. And even that, we've learned that sometimes we're not always. So, and I can use the pregnancy as an example again. I'm not worried about the way I look right now, which I actually love having my belly because I know he's in there, and like he's being created in there, so I feel like that's amazing. But I don't feel less than because I don't look a certain way. I guess that's like the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, you don't find your validation in that.
Exactly. Yeah. So some people will get their identity from the way they look, and it's so sad because what happens when
Yeah, and any part of that can be taken away from you
Yeah.
at any point. You could break something, you could tear a muscle, and then you can't exercise that. You control what you can, but you give up on what you can't.
The only thing you can do, so you can't control it, but you can take care of it. And I think that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And some people will find their identity in their bodies or in the way they look. There's some women who will tell you, I don't want to have kids because I don't want to ruin my body.
Yeah.
And that's such a sad thing to say
Mm-hmm.
because they're missing out on creating life. Something that is so much better than the way, like, has much more meaning than the way you look.
Because it's going to go anyways.
It's going to go anyways, yeah.
And then they're probably going to end up with, oh, no, I never did. We never had a kid, or I never had a kid. And you don't get to experience that next level of love.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so crazy to me because we have this power
Mm-hmm.
that only our gender has, regardless of what other people try to say. And we're giving up that huge power for something so minimal. Because
Yep.
the Bible will tell you that physical exercise or something along those lines, like the physical, is of some value,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very minimal. Like it doesn't compare to the soul, to the spirit, to
Yeah.
greater things.
Yeah. Sebum. I don't know if they know who Sebum is, but Chris
Maybe.
Bumstead. He just won his title for 6-time Mr. Olympia, so world champion, bodybuilder. He just retired, and they're like, what have you learned from this, or what's like your biggest thing you take away from this? And he says like, my greatest accomplishment or achievement is my family.
Mm.
He's like, knowing that I did give my all. I became world champion and held the title for 6 years. He's like, that doesn't compare to going home to. He says the way he says it doesn't compare to me going home to my loving wife, seeing my daughter, and the joy and happiness that they bring me every single day. This title, being in shape, whatever, being one of the 1%, 0.1% of the people in the world, he's like, means nothing compared to that. And that's the dude who is the world champion for 6 years in a row, saying that. So it just shows you that, even on that scale, no matter if you're like the greatest, that love and family should come first.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that example because we're not saying don't take care of yourself. I want to make that very clear. We're saying don't get your identity from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like I'm 6-time world champion, and my identity still doesn't come from that.
Yep.
Like that's powerful. Do you know how much inner work he must have done? How much? And I think they're Christian too.
Yeah.
Right. So like you have to be so good with God to be able to be the world champion 6 times and say, that's still not where I get my identity from. I know where my true priorities and values lay.
Yeah, and just to touch on it just a bit more, I think he's got like 12 million followers on social media, and he's still not like, he's like, you can take that all away as long as I have my family.
Yeah.
Like, multiple businesses and all that. Like, super successful dude, right? Like, what people would reach for, like, physique-wise, business-wise, financially, and all that. And he's like, none of that's in comparison to family.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then she says that the cost of controlling our bodies comes with insecurity, becoming judgmental of others, missing out on amazing things, eating disorders, body dysmorphia. So because you have so much, you're so focused on controlling your body, it actually causes you all these negative things. Like, who's the most insecure? Sometimes the people on stages.
Yep.
Who's the most judgmental? The people who are very worried about the way they look.
Yeah.
Because they're judging themselves constantly, so then they're judging other people constantly as well.
Was it comparison is the thief of joy?
Mm-hmm.
They're comparing themselves to people all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so crazy because that other person could just be going about their life. Yep. They don't even make their body
they could not even work out and just be born that way.
Yeah.
They just have really good genetics.
Yeah, and that person's over there, like, stressing themselves out, like, inside of, like, going through all these, having all these negative thoughts, and it's like, why are you doing that to yourself?
Yep.
Yeah.
All that to say, we're not in control of the physical because it was made from dirt and it will return to dirt. Mm-hmm. So don't get your value in that. We're not saying don't take care of it. You're called to take care of it. Live a healthy life. Be the best you can be, but understand that you're only going to be the best you can be and you can't control anything else. So if the body's starting to go or whatever, you can do maintenance type things, but you don't have control because it's all going to go away.
Mm-hmm. I like that. All right, another cost or something else that control will cost you is anxiety. The balancing act of controlling our reputation. So how we were talking about comparing ourselves. So there's a space inside of me. So she talks about 4 spaces. The space inside of me, the space between people, the space between me and God, and then the space inside of others. So there's just me.
Yep.
There's me and you. There's me and God, and then there's just you.
Mm-hmm.
And it says when we worry about what people think of us, it brings us no good. And I have I seen this, I think my mom had told me about it, and then I had seen it on Instagram as well. This episode was brought to you by BCN Supplements, our all-natural supplement company. And for our listeners, we do have a discount code if you visit our website, www.bcnsupps.com. You can use code BUILT, BUILT, for 10% off. Thank you so much for listening. And it's about a father, a son, and a donkey. And they're walking through a city, and they're just walking next to the donkey. They're traveling. And the people are like, oh, look at them. They're so dumb. Like, they have a donkey. Why are they both walking when they could just ride the donkey? So then they're going to the next cities, and they both get on the donkey. And people are like, how abusive of them to that poor animal. Why are they both on the animal? They could just, one of them could get off. So then they go to the third city, and then the son gets on, and the dad walks. And everybody's like, what an ungrateful son. The dad's already old. Why is he letting him walk? And then they walk to the fourth city. The dad gets on the donkey. The son walks. And people are like,
Like, what a bad dad.
yes.
For making his son walk, and he doesn't care about him. He's riding a donkey.
Mm-hmm. So moral of the story, people will always have something to say.
Yep.
And you should not care
Yep.
what they have to say. So instead of worrying or trying to control what other people think of you or how they see you, just do what's right. Just focus on your character. Know that your character is more important than your reputation, because your reputation could be stained by lies. People could lie about you, and there goes your reputation. But if you know who you are, you know what you've been doing, you know you've been doing the right thing, then it'll just slide off of you because you know it's not true.
Yeah. And I think even when people lie on you, it gets... If you have your morals and your values and you stick to them and you're always through them, people will see the truth when they get to know you or they see you over and over. And, you know, you have this lie that's told about you, and then you have all these people that are like, that's not him, that's not her, that's not the way he is, this type of person they are, this type of person they are. And it's like, well, hey, maybe this isn't true. You know what I mean?
Just focus on being that person and always being right with God, because He'll always speak for you. And then, like you were saying, I think that's very important too. Like, when people know you, they're like, that's so out of character. Like, that person would never. Yeah. And then it says that sometimes people start being hypocritical too when they care too much what other people think of them. And they start living this double life because they're trying to keep up with this perfect appearance, whether it's, oh, look, I'm so happy, or look, my family's so amazing, or, oh, I have so much money, or whatever it is.
Keeping up with the Johnsons, or the Jones, whatever
Joneses.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so then they end up living this double life, and that's exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be exhausting. It can get you to start, like, I don't want to say it'd be I was going to say a double identity, but it's like a false identity that people will drain their bank accounts and stuff like that just to try to keep up with the Jones, whatever.
Joneses.
Yeah, Jones, right?
Joneses.
Whoever the heck they are. They try to keep up with them, or they're trying to put on this personality and stuff that just be real. You'll connect with so many more people on a deeper level if you're just real. Because why? Because we all humans, we all experience things, we all go through things, and we go through, it may not be the exact same thing, but it's similar things. And when you can make a connection with people through past experiences and testimonies like that, you'll touch people's lives a lot more.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because it's true. Sometimes you share what you're going through, and that person's like, oh my God, you're going through that? I would have never imagined you going through that. And then it makes them feel better. Yeah. Because they're like, I'm not alone in this. And if that person's going through that and they're still coming on top, or they're still going on with their lives, if they're still,
They show you there's hope.
They show you, hope.
Yeah. Or flip it opposite, and you're the person going through something, and somebody shares that, or you're sharing that with somebody, they're like, I've been there. Like, and they share their testimony with you and show you how to get through it.
Yeah, that's so true, because sometimes being vulnerable, that you think you're alone in this, and then someone's like, hey, I've been there, and this is what you can do, and they'll help you, they'll give you advice. Very true. And it says, which we already said, but it says, your reputation doesn't ultimately matter. It's not about you. You aren't doing this for you. you're not winning souls for yourself, you're doing it for God. And I thought that was really good too. So,
Yeah.
like Paul, he got thrown in jail. And so we look at people now in our present time who are either being convicted or thrown in jail, and we're like, and people are like, oh, he's a convicted felon, or oh, he's this and that, he went to jail.
Put a name on.
Like the current president.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's because they're slandering him because he's fighting against the most corrupt people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going after him. And Paul, like this, they went after, I think it was a Sanhedrin that went after him just because they didn't agree with what he was saying, but he was preaching the gospel. And
Yeah.
so, like, even when I think it was the Romans, they took him to the Romans and were like, you need to put him in jail. And they're like, why?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, because we don't agree with what he's preaching. And the Romans were like, okay, well, that's your problem. But they still, like, found a way to put him in jail. And
Yeah. We just read that, and I can't remember what they said.
I don't remember.
Yeah, but it was that. That's the gist of it. That they just kept going and saying, "No, we need to put him in jail because of this." And I think the Romans finally just did it to get the Sanhedrin to leave them alone.
I think
to get them
so.
out of there because they were like
Yeah.
in the in like the courthouse or whatever it may be, just bothering them. So they were like, you know, what, just to make you happy, we'll throw him in jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when Paul wrote some of his books, and he talks about joy and how happy he is.
Yeah.
The whole time he's in jail.
Yep.
Okay, so the last one is exhaustion, and that's us trying to control our identities. So whether that's race, ethnicity, gender, religion, socioeconomic class. She said it used to be yourself, now it's create yourself. So we've seen that also in our society, where people are like, whatever you say you are, that's what you are. And it says, even though our feelings and desires are not stable and we change over time. So with the whole mutilation of kids that was happening, like the little kids saying, oh, I'm a boy, when really it was a girl, or oh, it was a little boy saying that he thinks it's a girl, and then wanting to do surgery on him, and it's like the little kid is probably also said he was a dinosaur.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I was Superman.
Yeah.
Didn't make me Superman.
Yeah, but I'm so glad that now we have, that's going to be illegal now for parents to do that to their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, that used to make me mad when I would hear about that. But it's crazy that at some point in society, we were there.
I think we're still pretty much there. We're slowly getting away from it, but we're still there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, technically we're still there, but now we're like, okay, we see the hope now.
Yeah.
Like the laws are going to start, they're going to start implementing laws against this. But the fact that people were doing that.
Yeah.
It's like a big psychological experiment.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. That's what just repeats itself in my head when I hear things like that. It's like their values and their morals are they have no basis. So that how can they fight something and be like, oh, like, I mean, like, if you tell me that, I'm like, you are out of your mind if you think like you're gonna do that to kids, like. But if somebody's like reinforcing that, it's like, oh, just keep them happy. You know, it doesn't matter what, you know, I think or whatever. Just keep them happy. I'm like, you are so lost. Like, and it's because they don't have anything to ground them. And they have no conviction in their morals without God. Because if you don't have a basis on your right and wrong, how can you make morals? How can you feel that conviction of knowing I did wrong? I know I did wrong. There's punishment in wrong. People need to be punished for things to understand. You can't just do whatever. And I think that's where it stems from.
Yeah, and it's so true when people say morality does not exist outside of God.
Yeah.
And what did we just go over at church today? The desires of the flesh. And all those things, if you were to tell someone who doesn't follow God, like actually reads the Bible, actually has a relationship with God, they'll be like, oh, you know, it's okay. God will forgive you. Drunkenness. How many people encourage other people to get drunk?
Yep.
They don't see it as a bad thing.
Yep.
Sexual immorality. Do what makes you happy. You're free to do whatever.
What is that movement right now? The
D4B,
B,
I think.
Yeah, 4B movement. Like, there's a whole movement to be sexually moral because society's been so messed up and been so sexually to have so much sexual immorality in the world.
Yeah, it's so funny because people are like, they're boycotting traditional values by having traditional values. Yeah,
We digress.
yeah, we can go more into that in another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're actually trying to keep this at 30 minutes, especially because you have a training at 3.
Yeah, in 5 minutes.
Yeah, in 5 minutes. So we're going to wrap this up real quick. But we'll be back. We'll talk about those things. All right. Yeah, so exactly what you just said. It says that's why our identity needs to be in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
The more we get what we call ourselves out of the way and make room for God, the more us we actually become. Like, the more we become what God actually intended for us to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it says having freedom in our identities is realizing what our gifts are and living in our purpose. And I love this so much because this is what I'm focusing on right now in my coaching. More on that later also. It says we are all part of Christ's body but different body parts. I love this. I'm just going to say that real quick. Like, my whole life, because I was writing a little 1-minute speech earlier. And so it's me, like, saying what I do. You know, as a coach, I'm trying to help you find your purpose. And they had me, like, starting from choosing, like, a specific moment in life. And I was like, where did this all start? And I was like, you know what? I went back to high school when I went to a college fair, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I went on to get all these degrees, all these certifications, all these different jobs. And all through it, I was like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my purpose is. And it's something that I've struggled with the whole time, like, all my life. And I did know, but I was running away from it because I didn't think I was capable. And it wasn't until I got closer to God that it's like it's like He opened my eyes. And but so that's why I'm like, I love this part right here, because that's basically what I'm focusing on. Helping people find their purpose, helping them understand we are part of Christ's body, and we each have a function.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to look at other people trying to figure out, like, oh, they're successful, maybe that's what I need to be doing. No. I was created with a purpose. I come with my own thing. I need to go to God, and He'll tell me what it is.
Yeah, if you're a toe, don't try to be a finger.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I love that. All right, so to close it out, we're going to talk about the real power that God promises. And that power is the power of agency. So God didn't give us control, but He gave us agency, the power to influence ourselves and our circumstances. So we are neither all-powerful, nor are we powerless. So there's certain things that we can do. And then I wrote down page 169 because I thought it was really good. So I'm just going to go over it really quickly. And so it shows the difference between control and agency. So when it comes to relationships, when you control, you're manipulating, you're pressuring, you're coercing, you're forcing. But agency is you provide wise counsel, you support, and you encourage, and you pray. So you see how different that is? Like, you're still doing something, but you're not trying to do it out of your own power. The second example is circumstances. When you control, you overwork, you obsessively plan, you cut ethical corners, and you cheat. But when you use agency, you plan, you prepare, you execute consciously, you act within boundaries of the Sabbath, you maintain a biblical moral code, and a well-ordered life. So instead of trying to force something, you're like, I'm going to do what I can do, and I'm going to trust that God is going to take care of the rest. If it goes good, it's because that's what God wanted me to do. If it doesn't work out, it's because that's not where God wanted me to be, and I'm going to be okay with it. So the last one is reputation. And when you try to control, you cultivate a false image. You want to manage what others think of you. But when you're working out of agency, you're cultivating integrity. You're being the same person in public as you're being the same person in public as you are in private. All right, so you have self-control, and that's what you need to focus on, and know that the one who's actually in control is God. The only thing you can do is self-control. That's literally it.
Mm-hmm.
You can control yourself to a certain, and even then, to a certain point.
I think the best you can do is just ground yourself in God.
Mm-hmm.
And He'll give you. You don't need to control, because if He's in control, then He's guiding. We plan our steps, but we plan our direction, but He guides our steps.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I like it. All right, and we have to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment if something resonated with you. We'd love to hear back from you. Send it to someone who you think might need to hear this, and we'll see you on the next episode.